Today we are going to talk about the Bitcoin spot ETFs, and now that it looks like they are much more likely to be passed and approved and put into action within the next week or so at the very most, what that will look like for the quote-unquote altcoins that I and we are probably the most interested in. So to just kick things off, Jim Cramer says that Bitcoin is now topping out. That was about an hour ago, and that therefore should mean that we should continue up. Okay, so this was from earlier today and yesterday. There were reports that BlackRock was expecting its Bitcoin ETF to be approved on Wednesday, which would be January the 10th of 2024. And everyone is expecting a buy the rumor, sell the news event. That's probably why we will most likely get the exact opposite. And I tend to agree with that. I know that there's a lot of people out there saying that the approval of the spot ETFs will bring in a ton of institutional money, and then we will get a very strong correction. With all of the big people involved, I don't see a large correction really being in the cards, and if it does happen, then I don't think it'll last long and or be as big as people tend to be expecting. Now, I am not a trader. I don't know all of the ins and outs and all of that, but just with the more fundamental and global economy things I pay more attention to, I don't really see any post spot Bitcoin ETF crash or major correction happening, or if that does happen, which the higher that it does shoot up, the more likely that we would be set for a relatively large correction before things even out and continue on up. I just am not sure how convinced I am of that at this point in time. Now, I had this on my video yesterday, but I will play it again here.
We could be sitting at above $100,000 Bitcoin before the halving. Do you understand how terrifying this is going to be once this ETF launches? There's rumors out there. BlackRock has already lined up $2 billion of new capital to come into the ETF products from their investors. I think that around $3.5 billion net will flow into the total Bitcoin ETFs within the first week. If we just look at the total figure of $3.5 billion, you're looking at 80,000 Bitcoin disappearing off of the exchanges in the first week. And what do you think that happens to the price? So based on the multiplier effect, I think we see a price of about $60,000 to $63,000 very, very quickly after the ETF launch. The signals and the alarm bells that start sending around the world.
So if this does actually send the price of Bitcoin towards 100K, then a correction would be more likely, right? And that would just get more of retail out as they begin to panic, which would in turn open up even more of these institutional investors, and they would want to be able to buy that pullback and continue the increase in price. So I've been following James Seifert, not really sure how to pronounce that, but he seems to be providing some pretty good information, and I have been incorporating his tweets into a couple of my Bitcoin ETF videos as well. So there has been a lot of noise, but we're in that January 8th to 10th window that a lot of us have had our eyes on. The window is or was officially from January 5th to January 10th. And that means that any potential approval orders are going to come on either the 8th, the 9th, or the 10th. So the 19B4s are being officially added to the SEC website right now. We got the spot ETF approvals, send it all. Now the 19B4s, from what I have picked up, are the final pieces of paperwork that have to happen for the ETFs to actually kick off. That is basically the last part in the process, and once those are reviewed and approved, then it's good to go. And if they're being added onto the SEC website, then that is signaling that they are being reviewed and processed, and that process can typically take a few days and up to 2 weeks. So I don't really think it would be up to 2 weeks, but it could be at this point. That being said, I don't really think that they'll approve one individually at a time, because that would create a quote unquote unfair advantage for the ones that get there first. So it'll likely be in larger chunks depending on who filed paperwork first, and it'll likely be approved in groups that way. And here comes the initial ETF money, billions by Friday, which is January the 12th, and that's just week 1. And as we saw in this here, the first 3.5 billion could potentially send the price of Bitcoin up to 63K as it continues higher. So this is being called the mother of all ETFs. And once we get this, which there was a lot of these investment funds on the news today talking about where they were at and their opinions on everything, which I wouldn't really pay attention to what they said per se, but just the fact that they are talking about it this openly and this quote unquote honestly makes it seem like it is a sure thing. And then of course this opens the way for Ripple and XRP to be involved in an ETF. And I thought I had more saved on that, but I was checking back, and unfortunately I do not. I saw a couple of posts that were actually showing an XRP ETF on the Merrill Lynch website, but of course I can't confirm that because 1, I don't have it, and 2, I don't know exactly what that ETF was at this point in time. So another interesting thing, Van Eck, they are one of the applicants for a Bitcoin spot ETF. This post called out the DTCC, which is the Depository Trust and Clearinghouse Corporation, I think. We have proof of pretty strong connections to not only XRP and XDC, but XLM as well, because the DTCC bought a currency, and they were working heavily with XLM. So in short, The three X coins are heavily involved with the DTCC, and they are involved in the processing of a lot of. It handles a ton of value each and every day. So here is a wrap up on that on the because everyone is expecting a buy the rumor, sell the news event. That's probably why we will most likely get the opposite. He Pharaoh X33 was referring to a poll here. 39% think pump, 61% think dump, and the majority are pretty much always wrong. What if the sellers ended up providing the liquidity for a stronger continuation, just as I was talking about in this video? Remember, whoever controls this market has been in since the bottom after everything crashed. And that whole FTX, SBF thing, there was a lot of very obvious manipulation involved in that. But I would go out on a limb and say that there is even more manipulation that we have not seen behind the scenes, especially after all of that happened with these companies, for example, like BlackRock. They're locked and loaded. The trend is your friend. Never go against it. So as we're talking about trends, here is the Bitcoin USDT weekly chart. Obviously, for the last, I don't know, like 4 months or so, we've had a weekly green candle. That hasn't happened since, what is this? September of 2020, and we all know what happened then. So if we check out the 1 day chart, and a comment, we are beginning to maybe pull back a little bit on our MACD, but our RSI is still very, very, very high, and that's probably a little hot. So we might hold this like about 46 to 47,000 mark that we crossed earlier. But if you look at the green line here, that shows that there is a net inflow of cash. Okay, so if we go back on the 1 day chart, that begins to show a little bit different of a picture on the 1 day time frame. At least our MACD is has been picking up, and so has our RSI, and we briefly reached over 47,000 for the price of Bitcoin earlier today, and a little peak. I think this might have been late on January the 7th, because our times here are in GMT. So on the 4-hour chart, we're still very high on RSI and MACD, so we may try to push a little bit higher, especially because we have a net cash inflow that is continuing to increase. And I won't check out the 1 hour charts because I'm not that interested in it. So here is the crypto market cap. Well, no, I take that back. It is the Bitcoin market cap. So we reached a high of about 1.25 trillion in October of 2021. And that was basically the 4.236 fib extension of the peak to the trough of the previous bull run. So for example, if we were to repeat that pattern, that would send the market cap of Bitcoin to about 4.36 trillion, which is roughly let's just call it like 4.5 times what it is right now. And that would basically be, I hate to even say this out loud, but a $200,000 price for bit, 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 Bitcoin. Now, a lot of things can happen that would change that, but I don't know how much would actually change. Of course, there are more Bitcoin in circulation than there were at this time. So that would probably pull it back to closer to 150 to 180. And people like, oh man, I did it in my last video, but I think it was Franklin Templeton. They were estimating a $147,000 Bitcoin going into 2025. Okay, so here is the market cap of Bitcoin, and I have the Bitcoin dominance and the altcoin dominance on here as well. And you can see that once the market cap of Bitcoin came down in about April of 2021, altcoins were already on their way up as this was beginning to taper off. And that same trend kind of continued actually all of the way until about November of 2021. And then altcoins were in the process of holding where they were, and it continued up even higher in terms of how much of a percentage of the market that they actually had. And here is the altcoin market cap, and this is essentially that same thing where we have the Bitcoin dominance. It was at its highest at about what is this, about, I don't know, like, here I'll expand this a little bit. It was at about 95% or so up here, and then of course after the price of Bitcoin had hit its peak, altcoins continued to rise and then rose a little bit more in 2018 before the altcoins began to work their way back down as Bitcoin went back up after the bull run was completely over. And then as Bitcoin ran up again in 19 all of the way up through, let's just call it that like November 2021 time frame, altcoins did rise with it, but they continued to rise after Bitcoin hit this first top and a little after its second top in 2021 as well. So there is an obvious lag there as the investment in Bitcoin rolls out of there to find more returns. It normally goes next into ETH, and then once that tapers off, it'll roll into the major market cap altcoins, and then it just trickles down. Now that's not saying that things can't pop off on a quicker time frame than that, but that is generally how things move.